REG tests whether you can apply tax practice rules, business law, and federal tax rules to routine CPA exam scenarios.
The exam is not mainly about memorizing isolated rules. It is about identifying the taxpayer, classifying the issue, applying the correct rule, and determining the tax or legal consequence.
Section 1. Exam Scope and Structure. Understanding the macro. Okay, let's dive into this. The REG section combines 6 specific areas of technical knowledge. You are tested on ethics and professional responsibilities. You are tested on federal tax procedures. Then there is business law. The remaining areas cover the federal taxation of property, the federal taxation of individuals, and the federal taxation of entities. It is important to understand that the assessment across all of these domains focuses heavily on the routine tasks expected of a newly licensed CPA. It evaluates your ability to handle the day-to-day regulatory, tax compliance, and basis tracking duties you will face in practice.
Structurally, REG is a 4-hour core examination. Your performance is evaluated through 2 distinct question types. On one side, we have 72 multiple-choice questions, which make up 50% of your total score. These MCQs are designed to test your issue recognition and your ability to quickly apply specific rules to given facts. On the other side, we have 8 task-based simulations, or TBSs, which make up the remaining 50% of your score. The simulations often require you to synthesize information across multiple exhibits and demonstrate multi-step application. Because of the equal weighting, both components demand equal focus during your preparation.
Section 2. Blueprint Areas and Weights. REG Content Allocation.
The AICPA provides specific ranges for the content tested. Area 1 covers ethics, professional responsibilities, and federal tax procedures, weighted at 10 to 20%. Area 2 focuses on business law, weighted at 15 to 25%. Area 3 addresses federal taxation of property transactions, weighted at 5 to 15%. Area 4 covers federal taxation of individuals, weighted at 22 to 32%. Finally, Area 5 tests the federal taxation of entities, weighted at 23 to 33%. When organizing your study plan, remember that applying a midpoint weighting is only a practical simplification to help you allocate time. It is not an exact AICPA median percentage.
So the crucial point is understanding how to interpret these weights strategically. Areas 4 and 5 are the largest domains on the exam, and they inherently deserve substantial study time. Areas 1 and 2 have smaller allocations, but they are highly important for establishing your professional and legal foundation. Area 3 is the smallest by weight, but it connects heavily to both individual and entity taxation. Property basis, gain, loss, and depreciation calculated under Area 3 will flow directly into your results in Areas 4 and 5. You cannot successfully calculate taxable income for an entity without mastering those foundational property rules first.
Section 3. Thresholds and Skill Levels. Cognitive Skill Levels.
A common concern is the sheer volume of numbers in the tax code. REG may involve phase-outs, thresholds, rates, and inflation-adjusted amounts. However, you need to focus on understanding how the mechanics of the rules actually work. Do not over-focus your study time on memorizing every single index dollar amount, because exam questions generally provide the needed current year thresholds within the prompt. Your job is to know the mechanic of how to apply that limitation to the facts provided, rather than strictly recalling the exact dollar trigger.
The exam assesses your capability across 3 specific cognitive skill levels. First is remembering and understanding, which means identifying and recognizing basic rules and concepts. Second is application. This involves using a known rule in conjunction with specific facts to measure an outcome. Third is analysis. This requires examining interrelationships, such as connecting facts, documents, and rules to draw a conclusion, which is heavily tested in simulations. It is critical to note that the REG section does not test evaluation. The exam only cares whether you can calculate the correct legal outcome based on the existing code.
Section 4. REG Decision Framework. 5-step strategy.
To execute effectively, you need a concrete strategy. This is a definitive 5-step cognitive framework used to deconstruct any REG problem. First, who is the taxpayer? Second, what issue or transaction is involved? Third, what rule applies? Fourth, what basis, amount, or legal status changes? And fifth, what is the final tax return or legal consequence? Applying this sequence consistently prevents you from jumping to conclusions before fully analyzing the facts.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the framework organizes your thinking from the very first sentence of a problem. Consider an original scenario. A C corporation sells business equipment. Under Step 1, you explicitly identify that the taxpayer is a C corporation. This is vital because if it were a partnership, the mechanics would be completely different.
Under Step 2, you classify the transaction as a sale of business property. You have now framed the context accurately before attempting any calculations.
Continuing the scenario through the final 3 steps. For Step 3, you apply the correct cost recovery and property disposition rules relevant to a corporation selling equipment. For Step 4, you calculate the adjusted basis and recognize the exact gain or loss amount. If the original cost was $100,000 and the accumulated depreciation was $40,000, your adjusted basis is $60,000. Knowing this allows you to determine the exact gain or loss when compared to the sale price. Finally, for Step 5, you determine the final impact on the corporate tax return. Tracking the adjusted basis logically dictates this precise tax return consequence.
Section 5. Study Approach and Traps. Tactics for Success.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an actionable study approach. First, learn the exam map. Next, learn the foundation rules for each specific area before looking at the exceptions. Then, practice MCQs to train for rapid issue recognition. Concurrently, practice TBSs to develop your document analysis skills. You should use your lectures and notes for structure and understanding, but you must use active practice to actually build your exam performance.
As you apply this study approach, there are critical traps you need to avoid. Do not study REG as pure memorization. Avoid the trap of ignoring business law just because the tax areas carry larger weights. Similarly, do not ignore property rules because Area 3 is smaller. And, as we discussed, avoid memorizing thresholds without understanding the underlying mechanics. The rules must be understood mechanically, not just memorized as isolated data points.
Further traps include practicing MCQs but entirely neglecting task-based simulations. Another major pitfall is missing the taxpayer type before applying a rule. Treating all entities or transactions the same will inevitably lead to incorrect rule application. You must lock in the specific taxpayer type first to ensure you are applying the correct mechanics to the scenario at hand. REG becomes more manageable when you understand the exam map, respect the blueprint weights, practice both MCQs and simulations, and apply a consistent framework. Identify the taxpayer, classify the issue, apply the rule, track basis or legal status, and determine the final consequence.